the tax rate last year was 11.0958. This year the tax rate per thousand is 10.2024. You know, there's not a lot of extra padding in this budget at all. The department heads were asked to keep things as close to status quo as they possibly could. They did a wonderful job of doing that. Obviously, with the cost of fuel being what it is, you know, there are large increases in fuel budgets. There were increases in healthcare, insurance, the workers' comp, all those types of things. So, you know, it's a budget where there's not a lot of excess. And, you know, to maintain the services that we have, that's, well, that was what we came up with.
And just to, Tom, identify yourself, please, just to be consistent.
The budget increase, if the tax base goes through, I got a copy of the budget today, the approved budget. But I'm a bottom line guy, and I've asked the school for the same thing. But basically, it's a 4.9% increase over last year, if it holds true and it's up tight. Last year, and I got this out of the Main Street, the budget, the tax rate was $865,658. It was to be raised, whether that was raised or not. This year it's $907,589, which is a 4.8% increase. Now that's the lowest in the last 7 years. If you go to the Main Street paper, it's been increasing very rapidly, 15% and up, and far beyond most villages. The other two villages compare to budgets for villages of this size. So it's an effort, there was an effort to control the budget compared to what past years were done. I can see that through, there are a couple of questions, as mentioned, that I have as to cost of benefits seem to be going up, and there's a couple of other places that went up. $100,000, if you don't, the overall budget went up about $100,000, but $150,000, assuming we're going to get $50,000 from the Gannon Fund, which is in there. I assume that's the gift. Okay. So it's offset by the gift, and the other. If we get it, we can get it. But so it's pretty much, to me, I looked at the budget, it's just an effort at keeping things done from last year, keeping it down and keeping it under control. And my only question on future budgets, you know, how much was looked at alternative ways of approaching it? You know, what do we do with the police department? What do we do? How do we share in things to get the costs down in other ways? But it was the best attempt in the last 7 years to get a budget that's reasonable at an increase of about the cost of living. So, you know, and the school's looking at trying to do the same thing this year. But that's what it is. It's a 4.8% increase to the taxpayer.
Well, I'm sorry there has to be any increase, Tom, but that's a great compliment coming from you. And that's one of the reasons why I've appointed Kathy to be the budget officer, so there will be a point person during the course of the year who will be looking over other ways to consolidate. I had a conversation with George Bell about reducing the cost for the police department, which I'll be getting to in my mayor's report at the end of the meeting.
And one of the things that I said at the school board, I went to the budget meeting at the school board the other night, there were 6 or 8 people there, probably 10 people at most, and you can attest. If the people want to control, you know, and I'm going to emphasize this to people, people don't go to budget hearings. And if you want to control the budget, I've seen more people here than I've seen for the last time.
Well, the public meeting that the previous board had on March 17th, I think I was the only, there were two members of the public here, and that was it.
So, but keep an eye on these guys. So keep this next to them.
We've got you, sir.
You know that.
Very good job. Is there any other discussion from the board? You were about to say something, Diane?
I was about to say,
So can we go ahead and just make those few changes that we were discussing before we go ahead and approve this budget?
Yes.
Okay.
So then,
Pardon me?
well, the one change was, there was a line item in here for the lawyer's salary.
Oh, right.
We're now doing it on a per diem basis. Rather than completely eliminate that salary, I'd like to keep it in the budget for this year so we can determine what the difference in cost would be from a yearly salary to per diem basis. We can then review that at the end of the year. We might be able to remove that.
Okay, it's an hourly, really, not a per diem.
Ah, sorry. Okay, hourly, sorry.
I'll charge you a whole day for this meeting.
No. The per diem sounds nice.
This is probably a question for next year then, but I mean, we would still need some, would that go under contractual then?
Yeah.
Instead of being personal services? Okay.
So what we'll have to do
So we
is...
would simply move it to the next line.
So I'm just gonna make that 10,800. Make it
Okay.
even down, so then it would be a total of 11,000 with the $200 contraction.
So then, Diane, we'll have to schedule one more meeting then, just for the budget before May 1st then, correct?
I'm not sure.
We have the hearing. This is
We're
the
having
public
hearing
hearing.
now, discussing, we were discussing.
If you don't approve the budget,
Mhm.
the tentative budget will go into effect May 1st. Any which way. So you have, you can, but you need to have the meeting after you approve the budget. I mean, after you make changes to the budget, I believe.
Which is just this minor change we're talking about now.
Yeah.
Is there any discussion from the floor?
$3, we need to extend it another month.
Well, I've got a couple.
Oh, more.
Because I decreased the Social Security.
Mhm.
by
That's
eight-
true, that's
By
true.
$826.
Where is it?
The last page of the appropriation.
Which is,
At the bottom of the page.
Page 7.
Yeah, it's page
so it is, we just move the money around.
Social Security goes to what?
7. So I'm gonna make that 37230.33.
So what I'm proposing then is we accept the budget as is with a minor change, moving money around for the legal services from into a contractual position to pay for that. There won't be any difference in the money allocated, just how we're dealing with it within the budget itself. So once Diane draws that up, that will be the final budget. Oh, she's going to say something again. Oh, also, by the way, to interrupt, it's Diane's birthday tonight. And I think she was
You're now 30?
Yeah.
What time again, Diane?
Yes.
So
Thanks, Gary.
Diane, you're going to say something?
I met with Joe from Hughes Insurance Agency, and he didn't have these figures before, but I had a little bit of an update of what the insurance is going to go up.
Okay.
So I needed to add like an additional $1,047 to the 31,000 that we have in there for insurance.
Okay, so if you can draw up a new budget, I think we probably
Okay.
should have one more special meeting just for that, before the 1st.
And the way the figures I had that I took, the new rate would be 10.205 as the tax rate per thousand, with the total real estate levy of $907,817.33. 0.33, so it all comes out even.
Okay.
758.
What? 907,817.33.
907-817-34.
3.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so can I see a motion to set one more meeting for the budget before May 1st? And we need, I believe it's a 5 or 7 day period to put a notice in the paper?
You can put a notice in tomorrow morning,
Okay,
if I have it before I leave.
you will.
Happy birthday.
You got a date there, Gordon?
21st or the
Diane can
28th.
get it to us tomorrow.
They're both Mondays.
Okay.
Do you want to go to a different day?
I'm fine with different day of the week.
How about the 22nd? That gives
I
me-
can't
Oh, that's true.
Tuesdays.
It has to be Monday and Tuesday for Kathy's benefit because of the
I
restaurant.
can't do Tuesdays because of fire, so.
Okay,
You wanna go with the 21st or the 28th?
28th,
28th?
okay.
That way if we find
7?
anything else, we can
Yep.
change them.
7 or 6:30? 7?
7, sure, make this
7.
meeting time consistent, okay.
Excuse me, Dave,
Yes, Tom?
in the budget for water and sewer,
Mhm.
I looked at the water budget, you know, our receipt is less than the operating,
Mhm.
and we got some money from somewhere in that budget at the bottom, it says, like appropriated cash surplus. Is that to make up the difference?
Yes.
So is this surplus in the water, this surplus money, you could make out, say, 135,000, you're gonna spend more, so you have to take extra cash out.
Mhm.
There is extra cash, but we're not paying for the water by selling water. In other words, we're spending more
Then
than we're
generate.
taking in, we're generating, so, you know.
And I believe this might be because some property owners are, is that the case?
But we've also changed the rate at
Yeah.
which we're charging for water now.
Right, so the
that
budget
will-
says 135,000 and possibly. So how long is this cash gonna hold up, seeing as we need so much in repairs?
Well, we're putting 25,000 into equipment reserve. That's why that, part of that seems higher,
Okay.
which
You
we
gotta
hadn't
put it
been.
into equipment, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I don't have a specific answer for you, Tom, which I'm sure is not what you want to hear. Any other discussion?
I do believe it was because the appropriations were changed. I
Okay.
just- Is that right, Diane? Because the revenues side
Revenues
was
have
increased?
changed, and we had a higher balance, fund balance, so we were trying to put more into reserve. Mike Schreiner's the one that did a lot of
Mhm.
this water, so I'm not.
It's also a situation too where the biggest water user in the village has been out of business for quite some time, Wally's.
Yeah.
So that might be one reason why the revenue is down as well.
We also have some properties that are in arrears.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the next item. There will be 2 presentations tonight from real estate brokers interested in the IGA property. The first one is Cecil Provost. Cecil, are you here? Yeah. Here he is. Come forward.
Good evening. I don't have a formal presentation for you, but good evening. I'm Cecil Provo. I'm the owner of Pro Realty New York. As you saw, we just opened an office up the road here last fall. I'll call him here so people can see me. We were retained by a client, which is a company called Waker Development, back in, November, December, I guess, to look at a number of sites in the area. Waker Development's a firm based in Rochester, New York. They do business all over the country, developing commercial sites for primarily national tenants. Retail clothing, retail food, non-food, and one of the sites that they identified that they asked us to work on acquiring for them was the former IJ building here in Greenwich. So in January, we brought an offer into the then board and presented it, and it got tabled based on the upcoming elections and so on. So I appreciate the fact that we're able now to begin discussing it. Have you circulated the offer, I assume, and everyone?
Yes, I believe everybody's gotten that.
Okay, so,
I'll email it to you. Should have left. I'll get you a copy.
I didn't
tonight.
open it up.
Ah, okay.
so I guess I'm here to answer preliminary questions at this point.
Okay, first question I have is the client still prefers to be anonymous that you're looking at?
My client is Waker Development, they're not anonymous.
Okay,
They will,
but
their intention would be to redevelop the sites
Mhm.
and lease it to a national tenant.
But they don't know who that, they haven't identified a tenant yet?
No, they haven't formally identified that yet.
Okay.
They have a couple of prospective tenants in mind for it, and they're a conservative firm. They typically don't purchase property or go to contract on property without having a very, very strong belief that they have a tenant that will be willing to move up forward with them.
Mhm.
So they do have at least 2 potential tenants, I guess, in mind for it, but they haven't identified who those tenants are to me
Mhm.
yet. So.
And for the benefit of the public, Kathy, who didn't open the attachment, the bid that Cecil's talking about, I believe, was $700,000?
$700,000, yes. They're looking for a 6-month period to go through all the approval process and do their inspections, and obviously they need to test for environmental issues and go through whatever approvals are necessary with the village to put the use in there they want to. They specifically, we met with Mr. Schreiner, who was, I guess, on the board at the time, and he said, you know, there was concern, obviously, it's a very high-profile property in the village, and one of the things that was concerned, he didn't want, he specifically brought up a dollar store or something like that, and it specifically would not be a dollar store. It's not going to be that. It would be a retail use, but they haven't gotten into exactly what it would be or who the tenant would be yet. So.
And by retail, you mean like, say, a non-food establishment?
Yes, he said it'd be non-food, not a dollar store. So.
Does your client desire the entire property?
Yes, yes.
Any other questions from the board?
How much parking do you need with that property? How big?
I'm not a site engineer. I don't know exactly how many parking spots they're going to need based on square footage and all of that. I assume that's something you guys are going to tell them what they need. But I know one of the questions that Mr. Schreiner had was, would it be a possibility of maybe keeping part of it? And they said, you know, they believe they're going to need most of the parking that's there for the use that they would propose for the building.
And do they have any time frame on when they want a decision from us? Or they
2 months ago would have been good. So the sooner the better.
Okay.
They have clients very actively looking to move forward with something. And just so you understand, they're a significant client. The Laker is. This isn't the only project that I'm working on for them. I've got a project in Wolf Road. I've got a project in Latham Circle. I've got a project in Queensbury and Quaker Road that we're working on all at the same time. So they're a significant developer. They're not a small town top. And they have projects all over the country as well.
Any questions from the floor? Liz? Oh, wait, identify yourself.
Liz Davis, a village resident, and I'll be looking right at it. Will this be a high-end retailer?
I don't know. I honestly don't know who the tenants are that they're considering putting in there. Obviously, that would be part of the approval process. But they haven't identified the particular tenant. They haven't signed a deal yet.
So we don't
with
know
the
if it's a
tenant.
box store or what's going in there.
I don't know exactly what it would be, no.
Nice. A handful
Well,
of...
the board would have to approve whatever it wants to go.
Right. Okay, so what you're saying is before it would actually go through, before the contract would be approved, we would get more information?
Yeah, just so you understand that the process is, they would go to contract to purchase the property contingent on getting the approvals to develop it and use it as they propose. The village board would have to approve that, then they would complete the purchase.
And then that process would take, you're saying, up to 6 months for all of that?
They're looking for a 6-month period of time to go through that
And then, but
process.
meanwhile, we wouldn't be able to pursue any other possibilities during those 6 months? Because
That's correct.
Okay.
Because the tenant's not going to sign an agreement with them until the development firm knows that they have the property under control. So it's
How long is the lease with the tenant usually, and what happens to the property when the lease is over and the tenant
my client would still own the property.
is still on the
The
property?
development firm would still own the property.
Right. And would then go about searching for, obviously, another tenant.
Yeah, they like to make money on the property, so they're going to find somebody in there.
So I guess my real question is, how much village input is there as time goes on?
In terms of,
Who will be inhabiting that property?
well, the village has to approve, I believe, any application for construction. I'm not that familiar with.
But only on the initial.
Only on
the
the
initial
initial
construction.
agreement, once, if we decide to go forward with what Cecil's proposing, we would be making the agreement with the development corporation, not an individual store.
So once the original is approved, if I understand you correctly, and should the tenant choose to leave, it is now totally in the hands of the development company, what
Absolutely
happens to that space?
That's
I
right,
just
and
wanna make sure I
it will still be on the tax rolls.
Oh,
It would
I
still be
just wanna
tax
make sure I
generating
understood.
properties, right. And typically, again, they're working with national tenants, so they're long-term leases. They're not a year, 3 or 5 year lease. They're long-term leases.
Yes, that was my first question, what typically is the length of this?
Yes, yeah, typically long-term leases.
There is a
Tom?
planning board approval, I would imagine, zoning and planning board. So.
But they're not very discretionary.
We'll definitely have to go through that process, that's correct.
So
Gary?
this would be similar, my name's Artie.
Oh, sorry.
This would be similar to what the Kmart Plaza's got out there then?
I don't know. I don't, as I said, my client hasn't shared with me who the tenants are that they're speaking with. But I'll always identify it as a large national company. They're non-food, it's not an outdoor. That's as much as I know.
Now, you're saying that your client's looking for the whole IGA property, is that negotiable?
Is it negotiable? In other words, would they take smaller?
Yep.
Or what, or only a portion of it? They need enough parking for their use, and they believe they're gonna need pretty much the entire property for the parking requirements there.
Tracy?
Yeah. Two questions. Could you spell Waker? Is it W-A-K?
Laker, L-A-K-E-R.
Oh, okay.
Laker Development.
Okay. And do you have a list of, could you provide a list of all the national tenants that Waker works with?
I don't work for Laker,
Laker, I'm
I
sorry.
own Pro Realty.
Right, right.
I don't represent them on the back end after they acquire property and do their leasing.
I understand that.
Well, can I get some references? I'll ask the tenant.
No, not some references, a list of all the tenants that
Of the
they...
tenants that they have worked with in the past, I'll
Yeah,
ask what they're doing to provide that, certainly.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Cecil, thanks very much. And also just to identify the fact, I know Cecil professionally. We both are members of a business referral group. He's in a chapter in Saratoga, I'm in a chapter here in Greenwich. I just want everybody to know that I have known him and met him through that route. The next proposal is coming from John McDonald. John's sitting in the back. Come on up front, John.
Thank you. I'm representing someone who I believe is known to some of the people here in town. And they also have made an offer. As a matter of fact, I have been talking to the previous board. I've been talking to the town almost 3 years about trying to acquire the property. And it was not for this current tenant, it was for another tenant. The people that are looking to it would like to go ahead and buy it. I have given a formal written proposal, which I believe the board has a copy of.
And if you don't have it, I'll definitely get it for you.
And rather than go, I'll read basically what was said in light of what the other broker has just said. My buyers offered to pay $500 for the land, $500,000 for the land and building, subject to inspection. They intend to remodel the property, relocate, and house the corporate headquarters along with 3 affiliated separate companies. This company will employ 25 people with an annual payroll in excess of about $1.2 million. And these jobs are all executives. These are professionals. They are not located people. Basically, it is the company, as I said, initially they wanted to remain anonymous, but I believe that enough of the people in town know who it is, so I guess it's okay for me to say it's Vermont Timber Frame.
And in fact, Tom expressed the
Tom said that he would be okay for me to go ahead and disclose that. If there's any other questions that you need to know about it, that's basically what it's going to be. We have had some discussions. We were not aware at the time. We just had the meeting to do the inspection of the property last Friday. Which is the first time my people have been able to get in to see physically what was going on. We had some questions about that. I also had a brief discussion and meeting with the fire chief because the fire chief had some interest in some of the property, and I'm waiting on further plans and specs which should be provided. And then we will go from there as to whether or not that works into the plan.
In other words, Mr. McDonald, what you're saying is you will not need the full property?
Based upon what Tom said to us at the meeting on Friday, he said he would entertain that, okay? I have not seen a set of plans and specs. So that would, it would depend upon
Obviously.
what the use is.
Yeah. And
He only needed 40 parking spaces.
during the, I believe that the bid was 500,000?
Yes.
Okay. For the property.
So who makes the final determination as to which offer you go with, or whether or not you continue to wait for additional offers if any are forthcoming?
That's totally up to the board to decide what to do.
So
We
then
still have the issue of where we're going to put a firehouse.
Yeah, believe me, no decisions will be made tonight on this.
How do you weigh, $500,000 bid, Vermont timber frame, that's kind of cool, something different, versus, $700,000 bid for what could potentially be, I don't know, a Walgreens or something a little more benign like that, what are the aesthetic considerations and what have you, or strictly dollars and cents, because obviously if it's that, then certainly the higher bid might
Well,
the day, right?
what I'm going to be looking into, and what I expect the board to look into as well, is, as Gord said, the location of the fire department, the cost from the two bids, the amount of money to be generated, not just upfront costs, but long-term costs, and the difference in the two types of proposals that have come in to date. We would need to determine really which one is going to be the best for the community.
Okay.
And it's my recommendation that before we do anything else, and I want both of you to hear this tonight, but it's my recommendation that we talk to a local real estate agent and try and get a market appraisal on what the property is really worth. Before we do that, I think we would be doing the taxpayers a major disservice if we just simply went with either one of these two bids without exploring what the property is really worth on the open market.
Is the village still carrying the cost of the acquisition of the building, or was that paid in full at the time?
No carrying costs.
It is. Okay.
Hold on, I just want a discussion from the board first. Are there any questions for John while he's still standing?
No.
What's that?
Do you want to say anything?
I don't. I think most of the public knows how I feel as the chief of the fire department right now. I've talked to the mayor and a few of the new board members too. I'm not against what we need to do with the IGA because of our debt by any means. One of the things I did state is I believe it comes up to about $4,500 a year right now we're losing in taxes off the IGA, which isn't much.
Dropping the book.
Think about it. Because once we dump the property, if we don't really look into this well, where are you going to put it? So you're going to purchase another piece of property, we're going to be in the same position we're in now. I'm not against it, but the one thing I did say to the mayor is let's make sure we review everything that we've got established for the last 22 years before we dump this prime piece of property and then sit back and say, what are we going to do?
Well,
because this is going to affect everybody too. DPW's and Tail is going to be receiving our metals building over here, so they're going to gain space. Hopefully somehow it lightens up to help the police chief out. So I mean, we've really got to look at this in magnitude before all of a sudden we say $4,600 is worth to be put back on the tax roll. Granted, the dollar amount right off the get-go is a large sum of money, which clears some of it, but the payments are done in 2012. So you have 4 more years of what the payment is, and it's a diminishing loan, I believe. I'm throwing this off the top of my head. You guys probably know more than I do right now off the top of my head with it. So I'm just saying, that's my biggest concern in defense of the fire department. We need to build a fire station. I think the public knows that. We've been out pushing that heavily. The fire department themselves, the committee has done an outstanding job of making this station up on their own free will with no architects involved and minimizing the bare necessities we need to do to have a fire station for 50 years out. And out of that, I can't see another spot in this village at this point from 20 years ago on that fits the need of the department better right now than the IGA lot. If somebody has it, please bring it to us because I'd like to know too.
I know I've proposed numerous times that we have the IGA. It is a place that accesses 3 major roads. And where the fire department sits right now is not accessible to major roads easily. And if there is another spot, as the chief said, in the village, let us know about it, because right now the IGA is the best. It's the best location for the fire department. That's where I stand. I've been quoted on that many times.
I'm the only member that was on the board at the time the purchase was made. And at the time, there was already 15 years, correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, 15 years of past looking and soul searching and trying to figure out what could possibly be done about a firehouse when that property became available. I know there was a perception that Sean McCormick made all kinds of money, but he did not. The sale was made between the village and Mr. Benjamin, Norm Benjamin, for a reasonable price, and with the idea that, you know, we were going to be moving fairly quickly. We had the opportunity to possibly work out something with Mary McClellan, which at the time owned the health center, that had it gone through would have been a win-win situation for everyone. Unfortunately, Mary McClellan went belly up during that time, which put 6 months at least on that beginning time frame. Then we tried to work with Glens Falls Hospital, and you know, for 3 years it was back and forth trying to get communications set up, trying to get the lawyers to meet with one another, and you know, so I know there's a perception that nothing has been done with that property in 6 years. It's not true. Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot that was done out in the public eye because a lot of it was legal negotiation, and there's only so much of that, correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, but there's only so much of that that can be done in public, you know, as far as contract negotiations are concerned. So,
And in addition to that, why bring to the public something that may not come to fruition?
But I also just want to, hold on, Tom, I just want everybody to know, when John took his client through the building, I went over and met them, opened up the building, let them walk through pretty much on their own. But the owner did indicate fairly surely that he would be willing to allow the fire department to have a good portion of the property. How much that would have to end up in negotiation if we went that route. So that's one possibility. As a matter of trying to explore everything, I made a phone call this afternoon to David Horowitz, who's the general legal counsel for Glens Falls Hospital. They are absolutely interested in selling 200 Main Street. And the fire department has plans for 200 Main Street drawn up years ago, which they told us when we met with them recently that they're still willing to work with. Is that correct, Chief?
Yeah, at this point in time, you know, we're not declining anything. We know we need to move stuff into a fire station before that one falls down and we have over $1 million worth of equipment in a pile over there.
No, but the point is the amount of space on that property is
Yes,
something that you guys...
the fire committee did sit down and they did design a building. Once again, they designed a building around using that point of that intersection, and it actually went into the IGA lot now, to where they took some of the IGA lot that the village originally owns right now.
Is it possible that I could get a copy of that site plan so I could share that with my client? If that's,
yep, I have
it seems like that's a concern. That
sure, I have a partial
plan.
plan.
From the IGA lot.
Yep, see, so I have a partial plan from Chief Watkins, which I got earlier. And I'll make sure you get a copy tonight before you leave, and also one to you, John.
Great. Mayor?
Yes?
Just a quick question.
Sure.
Throughout the years, I've been superintendent. Anything we've ever sold, as much as an old junk pickup truck for $250, we've accepted sealed bids. Something like this, which is over $500,000, why wouldn't we be accepting sealed bids on that?
I have a point on that question.
Yes.
If I may. There was an article in the Chronicle several weeks ago, and I've saved it, and it was about the sale in Glens Falls, the possible sale of a deteriorating building, and what the process is. And I think that would be of great interest for you to look at. I think they have an Urban Renewal Corporation or something. They were saying that they look at a variety of things. They don't look just at the highest bid. They look at the quality and types of jobs that might be created. They look at, they look at a whole variety of things. And as you were saying, how it might enhance the community or bring down the community. So I'll be happy to drop that off at your house or something.
That would be great. I'll make sure
you could share that
gets
and maybe
yeah.
talk with them about the process for, for selling the property or a piece of the property.
It's a good point, Leo. I hadn't thought about that.
Well again,
and part of my concern too is that so much has been not really in front of the public on the original purchase of the property years ago. And I just want to make sure everything was upfront to everyone.
But I mean, if you're looking to keep a piece of that for the fire department, I mean, you could set up your specs where this is what we're selling to here,
And one of the things that I just
We will be
reviewed,
addressing
right,
that, Leo.
was regards to that, and the village does not have to accept their lowest bidder or anything of that set, or the highest bidder based on the circumstances. It's law. I've just looked into this recently over anything, no matter what the cost is. But out of that, like Leo's saying, even if we set specs up around that, which does say that our first step is to see if anybody is willing to take a portion of that lot, work with that, and a portion of it back to the fire department for the building type deal, and go from there. And then nothing says, if nothing in that makes sense at all, then you put it back out to where the whole lot's available. I think if we, once again, we're taking baby steps before we dump this whole lot, and then the public's gonna say, why would we just buy another lot for $100,000 or $300,000 again? We just got out of debt for that. So I think we need to take little baby steps here and make sure we're getting all of our grounds covered before we dump this prime piece of property. Nothing against either one of the people here trying to sell it, but that's been something that's been earmarked for the fire department. We've been paying that out of our budget for the last 4 years now, and we're going to be paying for another 4 years right now. Let's make sure we dump it for the right reasons.
Tom?
Again, I get back to I agree with Dean, and you got to look at everything, okay? And I've brought up in the past, you know, number one, we don't have a cost, an idea of what a new firehouse would
No, we don't.
be. We don't. So we need something to base a lot of decisions on. You know, and I brought it up before that the village alone cannot afford to build a firehouse on its own. It's going to tax the people of the village of Greenwich too much. So there are alternatives to the fire situation, which are fire districts, which makes a lot of sense because then everybody pays for it. So how can we make a decision in near time? This is something that's really going to take a lot of time. But this may hold up that piece of property for a long time if you want to get rid of it. Okay, but we have to understand who's going to pay for it and what kind of a deal we make with the town for support. Do we go into a fire district? What do we do so that the people that are using the fire company, now the village of Greenwich Fire Department, are actually paying equally in the fire district for the building and for all of the costs of it. They are now, roughly, because they're paying for, town's paying for equipment, we're paying for the other. But when you build a new building at a high cost, a fairly high cost, you're going to finance millions of dollars, and your operating costs are going to go up. This village can't afford it.
I understand that, Tom.
So
and
that's a big part.
Sure.
Whether this portion out here is, you know, if you don't have a plot size and a cost size, you can't make those decisions, at least a rough one. So you've got to get that. That's not been on the table. Nobody's talked about it. You've done a lot of design. You don't have any money. You can't make any decisions unless you know what it is and how much it's going to cost and who's going to pay for it.
Tom, I agree, we're not going to rush into anything, but I wanted an open discussion on this so people will know that we're actually looking to move forward on the issue of the IGA and the fire department building. You know, I really don't want to have anything hidden, and I want the fire department involved in how we make the decision, because it affects them so much. And I'll also be getting to something in the mayor's report about trying to work with a professional grant writer.
Okay, but we also need numbers.
Yeah, well, I
Which
understand
is
that.
one of the things for the last 20 years we get a lot of.
Well, I believe the fire department, the planning committee has asked for numbers in the past, and the large group or whoever it is
There are
that they've
numbers.
worked with has never really given them to them.
There are numbers. They're out of date, but they're from 2002 and 2005.
We need an
Adam, if you have seen numbers, I'd like to see them. I've been on that fire committee.
We've never seen
fire
it.
department
I'll be
for
happy to
25 years.
They're in the
Never
village.
seen a figure.
They're in the village hall. I'll be happy to
I
provide
can
them.
tell you on an average real quick, just to let you know, because we're looking at numbers, and Mr. Semino is correct, we need to have numbers, we stated this before, that's something we need to work forward to. That's something we can do now, basically, based on the design of the project, if we know there's an idea of trying to put it on the property. One of the things the taxpayers have to realize is this committee's been working on this for 22 years, the fire committee. And out of that has moved nowhere besides creative design, get shot down. Creative design, get shot down. How many times is a bunch of volunteers going to get together and do that before they say, we don't really care anymore how much it's going to cost because we're wasting our time. And this is where it's went. And I just watched this turn with the Gannon Fund in a matter of 3 months because the taxpayer said it needs to move forward. We've been doing this for 22 years. So with that in mind, yes, we need to get a price. You're looking at $1.5 million to $2 million probably for a fire station. Just off the top of my head of looking at some other fire stations. With that, the village board in the past, and I'm saying past in the last 15 years, has created debt based on fire apparatus. There has not been an apparatus plan into effect that says we replace them at such and such a dates. With that, 2 pumpers were replaced in the same year and a ladder truck was replaced 5 years later. That creates debt. That's something that we do have an effect in the village right now to where they know there's an apparatus replacement program. If you maintain that and stay with that, the capital equipment reserve will build greatly. With that, the debt service goes down drastically. Before we get done, we have the payments of 1 piece of fire apparatus and a building, and that's all we have. But yes, Mr. Seminole's right. Right now we're paying for 3 trucks and we're looking at a building. We still have to move forward. There's ways to work out the trucks. I've already talked to the mayor briefly of consolidation and some other things to lower the tax burden and some other stuff like that. Plus there's a lot of grants as long as we get somebody involved with a grant writing system for the fire station to relieve the taxes. So there's avenues out there. We're in the beginning stage of a new board. Hopefully we move forward quicker, at least with getting figures back to the taxpayers to say, here's where we're sitting and here's what we need to do.
And Tom, I would imagine that one reason why no firm figures have come up in the past is because the board and the fire department never agreed on a specific location, specific plan, and therefore it didn't make sense to spend money on a study to see what the cost would be until we had a final location, final building.
They did that.
So.
But you got to do that. You got to come up with a fixed. You know, I'm all for doing a fire company, doing something to alleviate what's going on here. But it's got to be done right, and it's got to be done paid by the people who use it.
Agreed.
And we've got to get it done in the next year or so that it's put down on paper.
I agree.
Any other questions on this matter from the public? Comments from the board?
Can I say something?
Sure,
Tom?
absolutely.
Tom, I'm in favor of fire districting, but I'm not there yet to actually present this, but you can present it to the town and have it actually brought up for a discussion.
Now, the impetus I see on a fire district, I mean, there is probably Dean can tell you more about fire districts than I can, and you can go to the State Department and get information. But the problem is, the way I see it, and I'll ask Dean, is you've got 4 fire stations. You've got 1 in Middle Falls, you've got 1 here, you've got 1 in Easton, north of Easton, you've got 1 in Costa Union. And they all serve basically Greenwich area. So you need the village of Greenwich, the town of Easton, the town of Greenwich to get together. I've talked to the town of Greenwich, and the town of Greenwich says we allocate a certain amount based on assessed value, 65 cents or something like that of the affected area. And I said, well, will you help build the firehouse? And they said, we don't care what you do. So the meeting of the mind has got to come to somebody, the entity, if you want a fire district, you've got to get these people together. Or you've got to get together with the town and say, we're going to share the cost of a fire station equally because it serves us both equally. And it's a discussion that has to be done by the government entities, not...
I understand.
Am I correct in saying that everyone has to be in agreement that a fire district be created?
What happens is the town of Greenwich basically has to say that, and the village of Greenwich will dissolve the fire department and it'll go to a town contract type deal, just like it is now. Then they form a board of commissioners, a group of commissioners, who oversees the whole fire department district, which could be multiple companies, it could be 1 company, makes no difference. That board of commissioners reports to the village or the town board at that point in time and says, Village of Greenwich, you're going to pay this much across the board along with the town for fire protection in the whole town of Greenwich. Whether you can still have your village or not makes no difference. There's a lot to that. Yes, it works. It can be a benefit. It can be negative. There's a lot of pros and cons, and we can sit here for 4 hours in pros and cons on this and pull up state law on this stuff. And I can't go through it right now because I'd make sure I had my ducks in a row before I presented something like that. But out of that, it takes the town of Greenwich to start the process. I will not do it as the fire chief because it jumps on other fire departments' toes right now. That's completely crazy. I have to work with these other fire departments on a daily basis. There's no way I would sit here and say, drop Middle Falls, Easton, and Costa Union, we'll cover it all, make a district. No way. I will not say that. Will I say the town of Greenwich needs to move forward with it? Yes. Town of Greenwich wants to take and have a fire district. They can do that. Comes to the village board meeting. Town of Easton also is part of the village of Greenwich now. Remember, it involves more than the town of Greenwich. When you go to a district, I live in the town of Easton in the village of Greenwich. So you turn around and make it town of Greenwich Fire District, I'm covered by Easton now. You're gonna have a lot of taxpayers screaming that way. So this is bigger than just, let's put a fire department here and cover the town of Greenwich, all right?
When I was assistant chief, we tried working with these departments and basically to start this. And I'm gonna tell you, I mean, you've even got the village of Scavo involved. They're covering a little bit. And it'll never happen. You'll never get all those fire companies together. As much as it sounds like you might, you'll never do it. I'll guarantee it. You'll never get those fire companies to agree.
And then you're looking
there's
at...
too much tradition. There's even stubbornness. I'm serious. I'm serious. I was assistant chief 8 years, and we worked on this a little bit, and you'll never get it.
And the other thing is you've got to look at all the things that, and I'm not saying a con against this, I'm saying that we're trying to lighten the tax burden. There's nobody in their right mind that's going to take over as fire chief and have a district and be responsible for that and not get paid full time for it. It's impossible. I spend 5 days a week down at this fire station working on something, whether it be for 20 minutes or whether it be for 2 hours. There's no way it's going to happen. You're going to pay somebody for that. And then you're going to have to try to get volunteers in there to cover that area, because now when you don't have coverage in those areas, there's no more mutual aid anymore. Your mutual aid is Cambridge. Your mutual aid is Salem. You don't have Middle Falls, Easton, or Costington, they're closer. So these are pros and cons that everybody's really got to talk about as town and village taxpayers and bring back ideas, whatever you need. And I have no problem with sitting down with anybody and discussing the district program and the village program now and pros and cons. Can you save money? Yes. Can you save money in the village? Yes. The problem is the debt service. $77,000 right now is paid to the fire department and fire protection to the village of Greenwich from the town of Greenwich. That's a good chunk of change. The problem that goes to right now is debt service based on apparatus that haven't been replaced for 20-something years. That's why we can't afford that money to go towards the firehouse, because it's paying apparatus. Exactly. So I mean, you're looking at our last truck was 30 years old. We just replaced it. That's where that money's going to now. As that debt cleans up, that money can go towards either new apparatus or fire station payments or whatever. Yes, it takes time. Don't get me wrong. Grants are going to help drastically. Once again, this is something that me and Mr. Semino have talked about. I'm not against it, I'm not for it right now. I'm sitting on the line because there's pros and cons both ways. But get your facts together as village, town board, as public taxpayers before we really jump into something like this too, because it's hard to pull away from it.
Okay, I really want to be able to continue this, but we still have one full page left on the agenda. Obviously, this is something we're going to be discussing in a serious matter. What I would like is permission from the board to talk to a real estate agent to get an appraisal for what the property is worth, to allow us to evaluate the 2 bids that have come in.
I'll make a motion for that.
And second it, and there's a stipulation in the municipal laws that selling, buying, and selling property.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes, I understand that. Yes.
Do we need to, just a bit of discussion, do we need to, because that's a service, can David just
Well, I have a
point
question.
some?
Has the board ever determined or passed a resolution to the effect that this is surplus and
No.
unneeded? Okay, but it can't sell the property until it does that, determines that it's no longer necessary for municipal purposes.
Well, we're not at that point yet.
Okay.
But we can go out and just solicit an appraisal to find out what.
You should definitely get an appraisal.
Yeah.
We can't put it on the market until we...
No, not yet. No.
Well, there we.
One thing at a time.
We're not even close to that.
But can David appoint someone to do that appraisal, or do we need to seek bids for an
No,
appraisal?
you don't need a bid.
Because that's a service?
Professional service.
Okay.
Okay. So we take a vote on the motion?
Yes.
No.
Yep. Okay, fine. All right, old business. Personnel policy. I understand that the previous board had been drawing up or looking at the personnel policy.
Yes.
Was a new one ever drawn up yet? Or is that still under review?
I think Mike was.
So we're going to have to wait to get the paperwork from Mr. Kaufman before we can discuss that.
So we have to defer that to the next meeting.
Sure. Yep, no, that's fine. The next item is the peddler's license application, which came in, and it's not really a rewriting of our existing peddler's application. What it is there's a Xerox of what our current peddler law is, with 15 or 20 Xeroxes of what other villages have done. So there's really no recommendation whatsoever. There's really nothing we can move on this
He was
time at
working
all.
on it.
Yeah.
What we were supposed to do was review those, and I'll be honest, I completely forgot. With the idea that Bill DeCare, who was the deputy attorney at the time, would then take what we recommended and make it into peddler's license, and it just did not get.
Okay, so we're gonna have to move forward with this, and certainly the next meeting then.
Yeah, what we have is pretty archaic, I think.
Yeah, that's certainly what it looks like.
And generic, and makes it very difficult to regulate the types of services and, you know, I guess the restrictions that we put on the business. So, and I don't know, like the length of time.
Yeah, but at this point, there's no
nothing
reason
to
move
act
forward
on,
this at all.
But I mean, what we might want to do as the board in the next month is maybe all try to get in and take a look at those.
Sure, absolutely. I'll put this in the village office for everybody.
Maybe we can have, I mean, I don't, this is one of those things that you could do it with a committee, or we could do it as an entire board. It depends on how you want to spend meeting time.
I think it might be better looking at this at a committee level first.
Yeah, and there wasn't, I think Mike Schreiner and Julie were kind of working on this, and this is as far as it had
What
gone.
committee would that be?
Well, it would probably be two people that wanted to work.
So do I hear volunteers willing to work on this?
I mean, I'll be happy to be one of them.
Okay. So Tim and Dort are going to look into it and review these documents.
Have you had a chance to look them over? Okay, well, if you and I get a chance to look them over in the next couple of weeks, we can get
These are the
together.
entire,
That's the entire law from different villages. No, no one did. It was in the village office. We were supposed to come in and look at it. But why don't you take it home, and when you're done with it, just drop it off to me, and then I'll look at it, and then we can get together. And,
well, we've got a month.
yeah.
Give me 2 weeks on it.
Yep.
Okay. Any questions from the floor about the peddler's permit? No, moving on. Next issue is the water regulations, the barge. This is specifically dealing with well number 2, or is this another matter, Diane?
This is the rate increases and all that, right? We haven't, that's something the government was working on, right, with the verge?
I believe so.
Yeah.
So again, we're going to have to unfortunately postpone this to the next meeting until we get the documentation.
And it's going to be very busy.
Yeah, and the reason why we're having to postpone some stuff, I didn't want Andy or Tony to start doing any legal work until they were officially appointed as village attorneys. And because Mr. Catalfamo sent his resignation in early, which I had no objection to, I couldn't ask him to continue doing any work on it. So this is the situation we're in now that Jordan and Callie are an official law firm. They can go forward and start reviewing some of these matters that have been in front of the board in the past that haven't been resolved yet. Next old business is we sent a request out for volunteers to step forward for the planning board or zoning board of appeals. And we've gotten one response so far from Ashley Seward, who lives on Main Street, who's willing to serve on the ZBA. Ashley's application is here someplace.
In that folder right here?
Yes, here it is. He's lived, village resident for about 5 years, I believe. 7 years ago. He's lived in Casa Una, a summer home there, for 20-odd years. Previous to moving here, he lived full-time in Brookfield, Connecticut, where he had served on the zoning board of appeals in Brookfield, as well as on the Board of Education and the Charter Commission for the village. So he's somebody who's certainly with experience, knows what's involved and what's required of that. And he's also a next-door neighbor of mine. I really need to announce that. I did send an email out to everybody that I knew in the village asking people to volunteer. Diane has also had an ad in the Journal Press and has a notice up in the village that we are still looking for members. If we vote to approve Ashley's application to be on the ZBA, we'll still be short at least one member, possibly two, before we can have a quorum to meet. So it's really important that people step forward and volunteer. It's not a major commitment for time. It's a meeting that happens at most once a month. At most, it will take about 2 hours. I'm a past member of the ZBA, and to be honest, in about the year and a half I was on, I think we met maybe 3 or 4 times. So, but there are a number of issues in front of the ZBA that need to be dealt with, but because we don't have a quorum, they've been unable to meet. So I'm really thankful that Ashley has been willing to step forward and volunteer, and I would wholeheartedly recommend his application. And I would like to make a motion for the board to accept that. Great. Okay, so he's the one new member of the ZBA, and again, I would urge members of the public, those of you who are here, to consider volunteering for it. It's an unpaid position, but also spread the word among other people. If you're really truly interested in civic affairs in the village and you think that you might want to serve up here as a village trustee or a mayor in the future, this is a way to get your feet wet, to see what it's like to serve on a board. That's what I did, and I felt comfortable enough doing it that I stepped forward to do this. Okay, new business. Hannaford is, in the past we have had a situation with Hannaford where we had a charge account, where we had specific village employees who could go down and write checks or make purchases against a charge account for specific, like food supplies, water supplies and stuff like that, paper towels, toilet paper. Hannaford has now re-changed their corporate policy, and they're now having a specific charge account. And so Diane, you have the documentation of what they're requesting from us?
Right, we need a resolution that's authorizing that I can submit the application. Would I have 5 names? Leo gave me 3 of his guys, so when they can go and get vinegar for the water plant. And then Debbie and I, we need
just
any
generic office supplies.
So.
So there'll be, basically there will be no change in what we're paying for services through Hannaford. It's just mainly a bureaucratic change they're going through on the corporate level.
It's basically going to a debit card.
But
no. What they're going to right now is they'll give you a yellow card, and the fire department does that.
They're doing away with that. Usually
They are, because we just got it accepted to do that.
These.
Yeah,
Really?
They just accepted ours, they're doing it that way.
They're stopping the end of this month.
What? We just got new cards.
Yeah, they're stopping the end of this month.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's basically just a charge card, and we'll get a statement, and we will pay. It'll go through the normal process.
So it's a monthly statement.
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to
I'll make that motion.
pass.
I'll
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Do I hear a vote?
Aye.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the payment of the first quarter water and sewage billing. Water is $25,987.52, and the billing for the sewage is $20,732.24.
That's what we'll be receiving.
That's what we will be receiving. That's correct.
I had just sent the bills out.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, the motion's approved.
Aye.
Oh, question? Oh, fine, yep. Well, I hear 2 months. Okay. We're running late. The next new item is permits. We have an application from Amy Young, the American Diabetes Association, to make use of Mallory Park for the Tour de Cure. Basically, it's a rest stop for the bicyclists that are coming through. This is completely different from the bike race. This is an annual thing that's been going on for quite some time. It's a rest stop where they can pull over on the bikes, the people that are riding to raise money for charity, you know, to lay in the grass, to get their legs back in shape, to get a drink of water, and so on and so forth. They'll be used in the park between 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. on Sunday, June 8th. This is something that we've done in the past. There's never been a problem with it. I certainly have no problem with authorizing their use again. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Aye.
Any objections? Nope, good. The next permit application is Marie Buckley from the Relay for Life, and I have that here, but I don't have it in front of me to read to you. But basically what they're looking for is permission to put up banners down at Mallory Park promoting the Relay for Life, which is held up at the high school, which is a terrific event for promoting awareness of the importance of doing research for cancer and raising money for that. It's a great event to build up the spirits of people who are suffering from cancer. They're able to be out there in the public and be seen by, and to see the support that they've received from community members that either have known family members or who have had cancer and survived it. What they will be doing is putting a banner up on May 12th through the 31st, and they'll be putting bows and ribbons on the gazebo as well. And they pledge to take everything down the next day, so there won't be any... Oh, Marie, you're right here in front of me. You want to stand up and talk about it?
I think you've done a great job. But basically, we felt we needed to improve community awareness of the